Welcome everyone to IsisParenting's Sleep Support Webinar and Chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board certified lactation consultant, and board certified in pediatrics. I'm the mom of two older teens, and I am the Vice President of Clinical Content and Online Learning here at IsisParenting of Boston, Atlanta, and Dallas-Fort Worth. With me today, as she is every Tuesday at 12 noon, is my friend and colleague, Megan Casano. Meg is the ISIS Parenting Sleep Team Leader and Senior Sleep Consultant here at ISIS Parenting. Also is a registered nurse and parent educator and is the mom of 4 beautiful daughters. Today we are going to talk about early rising toddlers and a specific technique, a good approach once your child is perhaps 2 years old or so, to use a morning sound to help them acclimate and sleep a little bit later in the morning. So welcome, Meg. Would you like to begin today?
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. And I know we have a little bit of a smaller group. Nancy and I were saying maybe it's because, I don't know if it's beautiful where you are, but in Connecticut it's about 73 and sunny. It's gorgeous. I think everyone's outside. But the nice thing about these webinars is that they live on the ISIS website and you can always go back and listen. And hopefully this particular webinar you'll find helpful today. And as your babies grow, you may even revisit it for help down the road too. So we're going to begin talking about using a morning sound for toddlers. And just to kind of clarify the age for who I'm talking about, you can start using this as early as babies who are, just under 2, 20 months, 22 months. It's certainly not going to hurt if it's presented in a very sort of, what's the word? Sort of a matter-of-fact way. It's not made into a big deal. Sometimes if toddlers are too little, 15 months, 18 months, they just might sort of be lost on them. So this definitely will be most effective for kids, toddlers who are moving past the 2-year-old mark, and definitely by 2.5 and age 3 and 4. It's awesome. It's a fast fix. So when we say what is a morning sound, we're talking about basically an alarm clock, yes, but you're not going to use an awful beeping noise that's startling your child out of bed. You're using pleasant music, pleasant sounds, something that's kind of a nice way, a nice cue to start the day. You can go to, like a kind of an Amazon or Google type place and just look for an alarm clock that can play a CD, and you can get all kinds of options that fit your decor and price range. You can use an actual alarm clock that's set to a classical music station. Just be careful that, sometimes there's, if someone's talking with a loud voice or something in the morning, that might be startling to your child. Lots of iPads, iPhones can be set to pleasant sounds, animal noises, soft chimes, things like that. So it's just important to know what is an appropriate sound to use as a morning wake-up sound for your child. And I talk about this too because there's so many products on the market that are visual, like sun, moon, red, green. And I know a lot of parents too who will see this clock here that says 7 o'clock. They'll actually put like an index card next to their child's clock and they'll write out the number 700 and they'll say, when you see the 7 on your clock, then it's okay to get up, for example, or the 6 on your clock. And that actually can be fine for children who are a bit older, as they're getting closer to age 5 and 6, school age children really. For the youngest, 2-year-old, 2.5, the color is very abstract for them. And a lot of the visual cues, unless they're looking at it the second it clicks from, stop to go or sun to moon, it's kind of lost on them. So generally for the youngest toddlers, a sound cue will be more effective. The other problem sometimes using a clock, like if you're writing numbers for your child, let's say 7 o'clock or 6:30, then it's hard to change. If your child's sleep needs change, or you'd like your schedule to shift to, a later or earlier time, particularly a later time, your child would be stuck on, no way, mommy, I get up at 6. We are not moving to 7. So it can be a little harder to make a change. Okay, so who can benefit from this? Again, we're talking about toddlers who are aged generally 2 and over. Definitely by 2.5 and 3, this is a really nice, helpful solution in the morning. This is definitely most commonly used for toddlers who are in a bed, and particularly if they're getting out of their bed too early. Morning sound is often used in combination with some other tactics to help toddlers stay in their bed. And it's for toddlers who are waking up too early. So when you're making the decision if you'd like to use a morning sound, you first want to evaluate your expectations of your child. You want to ask yourself, is my child's schedule appropriate for their age? So remember, as your child gets older, age 2 and 3 and 4, their sleep needs can change. They're not 6 months or 10 months anymore. And if depending on what the nap is doing, if you have an older toddler who's taking a really nice midday nap, their night sleep may actually drop for a bit. And then when the nap goes away, their night sleep increases significantly again. So you just, you might want to take a look at some of the scheduling webinars we have recorded for toddlers, and just make sure that the schedule, the amount of sleep you're asking your child to do is appropriate. So, by 5:30 in the morning, is your child really done for the day? He's really had a great napping day, a nice early bedtime, and a full night's sleep. Sleeping until 6, 6:30, or 7 might not, just might not be possible. But assuming that it is, then you very well could use the morning sound to help your early bird. You want to make sure that your child's environment is conducive to sleeping later, which means if you are going to ask your child to stay in bed and sleep longer in the morning, that the room supports that. And so, we have webinars too about making sure the room is very dark, particularly in the morning hours. Light is a very powerful wake-up cue to your child. So it's got to be really dark until the time you want your child waking up. You want to think about if your child has a habitual feeding or hunger cue. The circadian rhythm, among other things, does drive for digestion at regular times. So if your child's used to, popping out of bed at 5 in the morning and having a snack or a sippy or a bottle, then that can perpetuate an early wake up. And so you might need to reverse that hunger cue by weaning down the feeding, making it less and less. You might need to delay the feeding by pushing it a little later and later each morning until your child gets used to feeding or having their first snack of the day when you'd like them to actually be awake for the day. And then you also want to ask yourself, does your toddler know how to fall asleep? Because those early hours, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., that is a very difficult time to, I shouldn't say very difficult, but it's more difficult to fall back asleep at 5 a.m. than it is at, say, 10 p.m. if your child wakes up. The sleep pressure is different, and it's a different type of sleep generally. So you want to just make sure your toddler knows how to go to sleep, first at bedtime and at other times of the night, so that when you ask your child to go back to sleep on their own at 4 or 5 in the morning, you know they can do that too. Okay, so then you want to evaluate your particular morning problem. You want to ask yourself, is it behavioral or is it both environmental and behavioral? I'm going to talk about each one of these things. If you have a behavioral type problem, this is when your environment is actually perfect and your environment is supporting sleep through the time that your child should be waking up. So in other words, your room is cool, it is dark, it is quiet, you don't have a feeding cue too early, your schedule is appropriate. So in other words, you are cueing your child in every possible way from more of the biological side of sleep to sleep in later. And so in that case, it would really be more of a behavioral approach in the morning. And so to tackle this type of problem, you'll introduce your morning sound for your child the night before. Keep it low stress. You're calm, you're matter of fact. If you'd like to involve your child in picking out the clock that you're going to be using or ordering, that's fine. That might be helpful for some kids. And so you're going to set your morning sound to your desired wake up time. Now, when we advise our families in our personalized sleep consults when we're helping a family design their schedule, we always recommend having a 30-minute wake up window and a 30-minute bedtime window, with some exceptions. But when you're using a morning sound, you really do have to actually pick a time. And so, if you've listened to my webinars before, you've heard me say, well, don't I want a 30-minute range? Yes, that's true. And your child's body clock will take over. You don't have to use the morning sound forever. You pull it out when you need to from time to time to solve a problem. When your child's body clock takes over, you put it away. But yes, when you're using a morning sound, just to be clear, you do have to actually pick a time. Okay, so you introduce your morning sound the night before. You tell your child what it is. You can even say something like, okay, when you hear your birdies, that means it's time to get up and we can play. Your child's not really going to know what that means until they experience it, but that's okay. So you set your morning sound to the desired wake time, and then this gets paired with an intervention to teach your child independent sleep, and which always starts at bedtime and which will continue all through the night until you hear your morning sound. Now, what do I mean by intervention? This would be the method that you are choosing to teach your child how to fall asleep independently, whether you're doing something that's a more soothing variety, like a Trading Down Sleep Associations for toddlers, which we have a recorded webinar, whether you're doing something where you're, an in-room type strategy where you're staying in the room with your child as they're learning to get themselves back to sleep, whether you're doing an out-of-room strategy where you'd be out or coming in and out of the room. That is something that we often visit thoroughly in personalized sleep consult. But assuming you're familiar with that, or maybe you've been through it with the baby and now you're sort of looking to kind of tweak things, fine tune things with your toddler, you do your intervention at bedtime, you do it through the night and until your morning wake sound happens. Now, what brings this all together is that when your child's morning sound goes off, you, parents, change your behavior. You do like a complete 180 in your behavior. You go from night mommy and daddy, where you're calm and boring and quiet and very neutral, to day behavior, where you are happy, smiling, you play, you make a clear correlation between there's your morning sound, now we can get up, you can turn on lights, you start your day, you have fun. Don't dwell on or talk about what might have just happened the previous hour and a half if you were trying to get your child back to sleep. Flip the switch, you change into daytime mode, and you start your morning. You'll repeat this consistently each morning. Generally, it does take 5 to 10 mornings. Morning sleep does take longer generally to come together than bedtimes. But toddlers, they're smart, and with consistency, they really, catch on to things. So 5 to 10 mornings, it might be more depending on the intervention that you're choosing to pair with this. And again, once you see that your child is waking naturally close to the time of the alarm that you've been setting, you can stop using the alarm. You can say something like, you've been doing such a great job remembering to stay in your bed. We don't need this clock anymore. Let's put it away. Some kids actually really love it and they like to keep it, but you don't have to use it for long periods of time. Okay, and I just note that in this particular approach, you may be doing your intervention for quite a while until the morning sound goes off. And that's why it's extremely important that you're confident in the length of time you're expecting your child to sleep and in your environment. So if you would like your child sleeping until 6, but your child's waking up at 4:45, you may be doing your intervention for an hour and 15 minutes. And that is part of this particular approach using the morning sound. Okay, and by the way, I didn't mention, but I often do, that this does go hand in hand with the other things that we've recorded in past webinars, like a great sleep environment, a predictable toddler style bedtime routine, the appropriate schedule, some of those things I touched on, but everything's working together for you when you're trying to make a change. Okay, so, let me just back up for a second on the morning sound, because I see, I see Nancy talking about vibrating. You do, with the morning sound, it is going to be important that you, the parent, hears the morning sound. So, if you're using a baby monitor, I do know some parents will actually set their alarm clock to go off a few minutes before the wake up sound. Actually, let me table that I'm actually going to talk about that approach in this next, the environmental and behavioral approach. Okay, so if you have having trouble with your child who's waking up too early, let's say your child's waking up at 5 and it's too early, but you've actually been going in another room, turning on lights, having some quiet play, maybe turning on a show, you're like trying to keep it together, slumped over a couch somewhere and trying to entertain your child. But maybe you actually have been cueing your child from a biological way, with light, with play, with food or snacks, that it is time for your child to get up. So in other words, your child's body clock is set to an early time. So going along with that, you may also have the behavioral issues of getting out of bed and those kinds of things. And so you when you're going to use a morning sound for this type of problem, you need to tackle both the environmental and the behavioral side of things. Okay, so this is slightly different, but all the same background applies, meaning make sure your child has the appropriate schedule, you're asking your child to sleep the appropriate amount of time. The bedtime routine is nice and regular. Your child knows how to initiate sleep, or you're going to be working on sleep initiation during this process. You'll again introduce your morning sound the night before, in a low stress way. You're very calm about it. You might want to again have your child involved in picking out the morning sound. And I'm just going to repeat in case sometimes when people go back and listen, I'm just going to repeat the age group here. If someone's skipping ahead in the webinar, that we are talking, this works best for toddlers who are moving past age 2, definitely by 2.5. Littlest babies, the sound cue, it doesn't hurt, but might be a little bit too young for it to be effective in the young toddlers, like the 20 months old. Okay, so if you're trying to solve an environmental and behavioral problem in the morning, you will actually set your morning sound to about 15 minutes past your child's current wake-up time. So if your child is waking up at 5 a.m., you might set the morning sound to about 5:10 or 5:15. And the reason is that, remember, you've got to handle the environmental change at the same time as the behavioral. Okay, and so what you still do your intervention that you might be doing in the middle of the night or at bedtime. You still do it until your morning wake-up sound happens. And when the morning sound goes off, you still do respond right away to your child, except in this case, you won't be like turning on the lights and jumping for joy. You will respond, you will go, you will be with your child, you can get him up, but you do need to stay in a dark, quiet environment until your actual desired wake-up time. So you have to look ahead a little bit and say, okay, this isn't going to happen in one day. Maybe over the course of 3 to 5 days or 5 to 10 days, depending on how far you need to shift your child. You need to be planning for what's to come by keeping your child in the dark, quiet environment until your desired wake-up time. So, in this example, again, maybe you set your child's wake-up sound to 5:15. And so you go to your child, you get him, you can preferably stay in the room if you can, to reinforce that the room is the right place to be in the morning, if that's where you're going to want your child to go back to sleep. You can do quiet things like talking, some quiet singing, lullabies. You can do, I know Nancy will sometimes say puppets, or you can do puzzles. It might be hard to do some things. Your child's room should be too dark to read. So there are some things that will be hard because it does have to be dark, but you can be with your child. Now at this point, you will also be delaying feedings or snacks. So for example, if you had a child who is waking up at 5 a.m. and having a bottle or a sippy cup of milk, you'll start to delay those feeding or snacks with the morning wake up sound as well. You're delaying that hunger cue. Okay, and then each day you'll set your morning sound about 10 to 15 minutes later. So 5:10, the next morning 5:20, then 5:30, then 5:40. But all the while, you are still continuing to keep your child in darkness until your desired wake up time, which might be later, say, let's say 6:15 or so. So for a while there, you may have quite an extended period of dark, quiet play. But eventually, as you move your morning sound a bit later and a bit later, your morning sound time will match your child's desired wake up time. And at that point, you would continue, it would become the same as the behavioral approach, meaning you would just be doing your intervention until you hear your morning sound, and then you change your behavior. You can turn on lights, you can play, you can have snacks. So you've shifted your child from a biological standpoint, and you've also made the shift from more of that psychological standpoint using the wake up sound. And so this is the part where if you need to set your alarm so that you can respond right away when your child's wake up sound goes off in the night, like if it's going off at 5:15 one morning and then 5:25 the next morning, if you want to set your alarm just a minute or so before, so you can hop right out and be there with your child to extend the darkness until your actual desired morning wake up time. Okay, so that is how to use a morning wake up sound. Did you ever think it would be so complicated? You have a biological approach or the environmental and biological approach. And again, this is often used in conjunction with other types of toddler interventions, but especially if you have an older toddler, 2.5, definitely getting closer to age 3, this can be a really nice, quick fix when it goes hand in hand with some other scheduling tweaks and bedtime routine tweaks. It can be really, really effective. And then as always, if you ever need more personalized help about your particular family and your particular schedule and your particular situation, we're always happy to help with an individual sleep consultation.
Excellent. Thank you, Meg. We have lots of great conversations going on in the chat room, and then a bunch of questions came in, and they're related areas. So we have a baby who's 13 months old, 15 months old, and then twins who are almost 17 months old. And we were talking a little bit about these babies who are younger than the appropriate age to think about a morning sound approach, but they are having their early morning wakings. And one thing we were talking about was the 2 naps rather than 1 nap. So the 15-month-old and the 16-month-old are both doing quite well with 2 naps a day, but I was wondering if moving them forward to transitioning to 1 nap during the day will possibly possibly
time.
help extend their morning sleep
Are these
time
babies waking up
because they are
ultra
waking up
early, like
early.
4 or 5 in the morning, or like 6? Mhm. Yeah.
Well, let's
You know,
see. In the
that
chat
would have
room,
been the
Lauren had
strategy
said
I would have
that
looked
her
at first.
son
I'd
for
be
two
curious to
weeks
know
had
how
been
many
going
nights in
about
a row she
6:30 to
did it,
6
what she paired
a.m.,
it with.
6:30 p.m. to 6
The 15
a.m.
to 16 months, I mean,
And
I
now
I
he's waking up
have
at
an almost
4:30
14
to
months, so I know
5:30,
what you guys
and
are going
she's
through.
tried putting to sleep a little
When they're
bit
still
later
taking
to
2
hope that
nice
it would
naps a
nudge his
day
mornings a little
and they're
bit
getting a good
later.
amount of sleep,
But
then your night
he's
does
still getting
often
up at
shorten a
by
little
5
bit,
a.m. regardless of when she puts him to
temporarily,
sleep.
before then increasing
She's
again, like Nancy was saying, when the
he's
naps
taking
merge to just one, then your night sleep increases again. And so, for a 16-month-old who's going to bed at 6:30 p.m., yeah, by 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, he might just be done if he's had 2 good naps. So I would look at the spacing of the naps. Are they spaced far enough apart? Is your last window of wakefulness of the day your longest of the day? So your child has enough time to rebuild that sleep pressure, has some nice natural light exposure, which is helpful for the circadian rhythm. And so definitely my sense from what you're describing, Nancy, would have been to try with the later bedtime, to try to shift the night later for this particular baby, to push the morning wake time later as well. But that would have to be paired with making sure the environment was going along with that in the morning, and possibly some sleep intervention in the morning too. But I do always look at expectations when a 15 month, 16 month, 17-month baby who's taking 2 good naps. The baby is not going to sleep like a 6-month-old. Like when your child was 6 months old, they'd plow through a 12-hour night and take 2 great naps. That changes. Sleep needs change and do drop, and that's okay. That's normal. Your child can still be really well rested, even if they're only sleeping 10 and a half or 11 hours at night. So yeah. Okay. Oh. Well, this particular mom sounded
good to
like
know that ties in with
her
another
child was
question I
having a
have.
really nice, like
And
almost
I'm
12-hour
laughing
night.
too. I'm chuckling
That's
because,
why
of
I
course,
said
I
that.
work with so many moms with 6-month-olds who would probably be shaking their heads laughing at
Yeah.
home for you to say, oh, and they're not going to sleep like a 6-month-old 12 hours at night and 2 great naps during the day. I'm sure quite a few moms with 6-month-olds would give just about anything for that. But yes, you're saying some. Yes, had been 2 weeks. That's why she's loath to give it up and have that 4:30 a.m. wake up call. Um, so Kara,
I
who
was gonna
has
say, Kara,
the
what's the
twins, was
problem?
saying her question was actually not so much about the early morning waking, but about the fact that her
Yeah,
babies at 17
especially
months
with
are
twins.
still taking 2 good naps during the day, and they are still sleeping close to 11 to 12 hours solid at night. So I think her question was more about, is it okay to leave them at 2 naps during the day? And my uneducated answer to that is hell yeah. If they're napping well during the day and they're sleeping well at night, what's the problem? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum is a mom with a 13-month-old, and she wants to know, I'll just read her question. My son rarely gets as many sleeps as the official recommendations. He's typically only sleeping 10 to 11 hours, including 2.5 hours of naps in 24 hours. He is fussy at times, but that might just be because he's a fussy 13-month-old. Most nights he seems wide awake and happy to keep playing well past bedtime. Note that parents are also night owls. Mornings he wakes up equally early, wakes up on his own time, or we have to wake him up to get to daycare and work on time. Has he learned to sleep?
So Nancy,
Has he learned to live sleep
he's
deprived,
getting
or does
about
he
two and a
really
half
not need as
hours
much
of day
sleep? And
sleep,
how
which
can
means
she
he's
tell? How can she
getting
tell if he
only
should be
about
getting more
eight and a
sleep,
half or
if the
9 at night.
fussiness is due to being sleep deprived. He's at childcare, so we know sometimes babies don't nap so well there.
We do talk about
Is he just getting
averages,
into a routine at home where
and the reason
his
they are
bookends
averages
are
some will
shortened
be
because
higher,
he's
some will
up
be
and
lower.
playing
So
and so on?
it's
Should they be trying to
good that
get
you're
him into an
watching your
earlier
child
bedtime so he can get more sleep at
seeing
night?
how he acts. Does he seem well rested? But capacity for staying awake, this is what Erin likes to say, capacity to stay awake does not equal time your baby should be awake. So, just because he seems like he might be doing fine on it, I would try, if it was me, I would try for a longer night. Nancy, how old is baby again? 13 months. Okay, so 2.5 hours of day sleep is just about right. That's not, it's not like that's excessive day sleep. It's not too little day sleep. It's right about right. I would say even trying to get up to a 10 to 10.5 hour night would be very reasonable at that age, and I would try for that. And so whether that comes with half an hour earlier bedtime and a half an hour later sleep in time, or hour earlier bedtime, hour later wake time, remember that you can't make a change like that all at once. It has to be made slowly using environment. Like Nancy said, it may just be that the night has shortened because of family life and being up and playing and having lights on, and the circadian rhythm has kind of compressed to this shorter night. And so just changing the environment, keeping his little body in the sleep environment for your desired, from your desired bedtime all the way through to your desired wake up time, if your child knows how to go to sleep, may lengthen the night naturally. If the child doesn't know how to go to sleep, some babies fall asleep pretty well at bedtime because they're tired, and then their sleep pressure and their sleep cycles kind of carry them through this long, 8, 9, 10 hour night, but they can't make it through those last, couple of hours because it's more difficult when the going gets tough. So you sort of ask yourself, does he know how to sleep? If you need to pair it with an intervention, you could go that route too.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Meg. So let's see. There's Kara's beautiful little ones a few months ago. They're a little older now. And we actually have a great topic planned for next week. I'll let Meg do a little bit more of a thorough explanation. But we're going to talk about transitioning away from nursing to sleep and gently reducing the nursing to sleep association, and gradually helping babies find other ways to fall asleep, because that can actually help your baby find other ways to fall asleep when they do wake up frequently in the middle of the night. All babies are going to continue to wake up numerous times at night. The difference is, do you need to feed them each time? Then do you need to even resettle them each time? And then finally, do you even need to know each time? We all turn over and fix our pillows and get comfortable again in bed in
So
light
the
sleep stage,
webinar
and your
next
babies are going
week
to do that all through
is
infancy, all through
focused
toddlerhood,
not
all through
on
childhood, and all through
teaching your
adulthood.
child to
That's what we
sleep
do,
through the
as
night
I
or
like to
teaching
say.
your
But we
child
wake up in the middle of
how
the
to
night and we
go to
turn over. We
sleep
don't go
on
downstairs
their
and
own.
make
It
ourselves a
is
false
all
up.
about
So
how you
gradually your baby
change
will
the
be able
nursing to
to
sleep
learn to sleep in
association.
longer stretches of night without
And
feeding, and
basically,
that
I'm going to
nursing to
teach you
sleep
how
association
to
is a
move from nursing your
beautiful,
child to
deeply
sleep to,
ingrained,
in
comforting,
most cases, it would be
overarching,
rocking to sleep,
nurturing,
which sounds
warm
like,
sensation.
okay, well, then
So
what? But
it's a tough one.
that's
Meg, what would
actually
you like to
huge,
add about
huge,
that? You
huge
said that you
progress
have
for
3 different
a lot
gentle
of families.
approaches.
Once you know how to soothe your baby in another way, now a babysitter could put your baby to bed, or another caregiver could put your baby to bed, or you could now start to trade down some sleep associations on the path to independent sleep. You now have all these different options you can do for consolidating your baby's night's sleep. So it's actually a really, really important first step. But there are different ways to do it, and we've got these 3 really awesome ways. They are all soothy, but they are you know, what's the way I want to say this, Nancy? They, yeah, yeah. But three different options, sort of different levels of soothing, I guess, is the right description. So whether you want to just spend a couple of months and you just are, want to take it really super slow and easy, or whether you want to spend just a couple of weeks working on it, or whether you want to spend just a few days, they will all be supportive ways to transition away from the nursing to sleep association.
Gentle but effective, slow but effective.
No.
And I think as many of you know, if you know myself and you know Meg, I'm a lactation consultant and a big advocate of breastfeeding. And Meg herself has nursed all four of her beautiful daughters, and you're not going to hear any night nursing is bad, must wean stories from either of us. So we are all for maintaining milk supply and nurturing through cuddles and nurturing at the breast as well. But as I like to say, you can continue on and nurse all through infancy and toddlerhood and so on. But nursing your toddler doesn't necessarily need to mean that you're not going to get sleep at night. So there are ways as your babies get older where you can begin to set some limits around when you're going to breastfeed. And certainly we're not suggesting that the 2 and the 4-month-olds, we were answering some night feeding questions on the chat room, not suggesting that they not be nursed at night. We're talking about babies who are having sleep association issues who, each time they wake a little bit at night, they need to nurse in order to fall back asleep. So those are the types of things that we'll talk about. All right, I think we better wrap up. Thank you for attending today. It was great to see some new names in the chat room. Please add this to your calendar and come back next week and help us spread the word. And on Thursday, we have our breastfeeding and pumping webinar. The topic this week is the early days in the hospital. So please let any expecting moms know that they may want to tune in for that one.